So imagine walking down a busy New York City sidewalk next to a friend, and people pass by without taking a second glance. Your friend is dressed inconspicuously, just another face in the crowd. Suddenly, she turns to you and she asks, "Do you want me to become her?" You're confused, but you nod anyway. And then something happens. With a subtle shift that happens so quickly, you don't even see it happening. Something almost magical happens. In an instant, cars slow down, pedestrians stop and stare, heads turn one right after the other. They begin to recognize who was hidden in plain sight just moments before. And that person would be the most famous blonde bombshell, Marilyn Monroe. So this was a true story that was recounted by Marilyn's friend, Amy Green. She describes it as 1 second, Marilyn was effectively invisible, and the next she shifted something within herself and suddenly became the center of attention. This astonishing ability is what we're calling the Marilyn Monroe Effect. Hey there, I'm Melody Bose, your host of Jeans with a Blazer, a podcast about rewriting the rules of work and life. So simply put, this phenomenon refers to Marilyn Monroe's unique talent for transforming her presence from ordinary to extraordinary in just a matter of seconds. It is the power to captivate and influence others by being able to consciously project this essence almost on demand. Marilyn could be Norma Jean Baker, which was her real name. She could be, virtually unrecognized on the street, and then suddenly embody the icon that was Marilyn Monroe the next moment. And this isn't about physical beauty or fame. So as one article explains, the Marilyn Monroe effect is not just about physical beauty, it's about the subtle, almost magical transformation that Monroe could invoke at will. This is a testament to the energy and confidence we project more than the clothes we wear or the features that we have. Yes, we know that Marilyn had her platinum blonde hair and her red lips and the glamour, but there are countless other pretty blondes that walked New York without causing a ripple. Marilyn's real X factor was an inner switch, and that's what we're getting into today. So today, I'm exploring how you can harness this effect for personal transformation and even in business and branding strategy to humanize your organization and just how powerful that can be. We're going to look at the psychology behind it, examples from pop culture and history, and practical tips to put it into action. We're even going to give a little bit of metaphysical insight through the law of assumption, which is the idea that what you assume to be true becomes true. And if you're thinking, Mel, I don't know about this. This seems like a bit of a reach. Just wait. All right, backgrounds and examples. So, from Marilyn Monroe to modern icons, Marilyn's ability to turn her star quality is literally legendary. But she is not the only one who has tapped into this alter ego or heightened persona. In fact, understanding her effect can shed light on how many public figures and leaders manage their presence. Let's consider a few examples. Beyoncé, Sasha Fierce. The global superstar Beyoncé is actually a self-described introvert off stage. So how does she command stages and have all of that presence in front of millions? So one tool she used was creating her presence, an alter ego named Sasha Fierce. And this is quoting Beyoncé, "Sasha Fierce is the fun, more sensual, more aggressive, more outspoken side that comes out when I'm on stage." This is what Beyoncé said to Oprah. So this empowered persona helped her overcome stage fright and fully step into her greatness during her performances. So Beyoncé has earned rave reviews for her awe-inspiring swagger on tour, and she credits techniques like her alter ego to this for maintaining that powerful presence. Now, switching gears, Kobe Bryant's Black Mamba. Rest in peace, good sir. Kobe Bryant, our late basketball legend, he famously nicknamed himself Black Mamba to separate his on-court mentality from his off-court self. We're seeing a trend here. He worked with mindset coach Todd Herman to craft this alter ego as a way to channel the ferocity and the focus when competing on the court. So Kobe explained that, Quote, as silly as it may seem, there's real power in adopting an alter ego to unlock your inhibitions and give you the freedom to embrace who you want to be. When he stepped on the court, he mentally became a Black Mamba, ultra confident, deeply focused, and this helped him perform at his peak. Off the court, he could kick back and relax and be the friendly Kobe that everyone loved. All right, so let's switch gears even more and go fiction. To all my superhero fans out there, Clark Kent and Wonder Woman, the power of persona. So think of the mild-mannered Clark Kent who, with a quick costume change, stands tall as Superman, commanding and heroic. Same thing with Diana Prince spinning into Wonder Woman. So these transformations are dramatic, but at their core, they illustrate one very, very important truth. We all contain multiple facets. So going back to Kobe Bryant, his performance coach Todd Herman, who worked with Kobe, he actually encourages people to have different personas for different arenas of their life: work, sports, creative pursuits. It's not about being fake. It's about tapping into the version of you that's needed for the task at hand. Okay, because we're not faking it till we make it. We already have that inside us and we're just activating it. Okay, you might be thinking, I'm not a movie star or a rock star, so how does this all apply to me? Okay, so have you ever had to psych yourself up for a job interview and tell yourself, I can do this, even if your nerves are fluttering and your heart is racing? Or maybe you've had to walk yourself through right before a big presentation, just taking a deep breath, even though you're nervous and you feel like, you just want to run out of there. So these are everyday examples in just a more watered down version of stepping into a persona. So back to Marilyn, what exactly is happening when someone flips on the Marilyn Monroe Effect? We're gonna get in there, we're gonna dig in. At a psychological level, it's a combination of mindset and nonverbal communication. I have a few previous episodes that covers some of this stuff more in depth: nonverbal communication, body language, things like that. I go into it much more with more examples and get really in depth. So if you want to check those out, that'd be a good place to head out after this. But I'm just going to break it down at a high level. All right, so mindset. Mindset is I belong here. So often a huge part of presence is what you believe about yourself as you enter a space. If you walk in thinking, I don't belong here, I'm not worthy, your body will likely shrink, maybe your eyes will dart away, and then people will overlook you. So Marilyn, in her off mode, enjoyed being unnoticed in New York. She was effectively telling herself she was just a normal person on the street. And so she became that. But when she decided to become Marilyn, she believed herself to be the Marilyn, the persona that she created for herself, the superstar that was worthy of attention, and her body and energy just followed suit. Psychologists refer to this as acting as if, essentially adopting the beliefs and feelings that you would have if you were already the confident version of yourself that you aspire to be. Whoa. So there's a lot of levels here. We're kind of like zooming out of ourself to look at ourself in these moments. But that's essentially what that is. Studies show that this isn't just pretending. Okay, this isn't just your imagination. It can genuinely shift your mood and your behaviors. William James, a famed psychologist, once said, if you want equality, act as you already have it. Next is nonverbal communication. So with the mindset in place, the body often follows. Posture, eye contact, facial expression, and voice all transmit signals to others and back to yourself. So in Marilyn's case, observers noticed that they couldn't quite put a finger on what changed about her because it was just so very subtle. So maybe she just stood up a little bit taller and straightened her back. Maybe she lifted her chin. Maybe she did that famous walk that she does to loosen herself up. And these nonverbal cues, they scream confidence. For example, just as maintaining comfortable eye contact and smiling can make you appear more confident and more approachable. It's that simple. And it also makes you feel more upbeat. So let me give you an example for you, a little trick that you can try. Ally McBeal calls it smile therapy, literally holding a big grin to instantly uplift your mood and reduce anxiety. And I know this can sound cheesy and weird and kind of awkward to do by yourself, but the next time you feel nervous or you feel a little bit of anxiety, lift your head up, stand tall and smile gently, you will likely have a visceral experience to your mood changing because your body changes. It's crazy. All right, and the last thing, energy and focus. So another element is the energy or vibe that you give off. Some call it an aura. When Marilyn switched on, it was as if her energy field expanded. She became fully present, fully herself, or that star self that we all know, and people could sense it. We've all been around someone who, without saying a word, they just change the energy of the room by being in it. And sometimes it's confidence, sometimes it's a warm and kind presence. The key is they're fully present within that moment. So on the flip side, if you're feeling scattered or stuck in your head with worries, that diminishes your presence. It waters down the fullness of who you are. So people might literally not see you because you are not energetically there. Creating mindfulness, the idea of being present within the moment, can seriously improve how you carry yourself and connect with others. So the Marilyn Monroe effect boils down to a combination of belief and embodiment. Believe you're captivating and then embody it in how you move, look, and engage. Easier said than done, right? Now, this can feel strange or difficult to do at first. Many of us battle with what's known as imposter syndrome, that nagging feeling that we're not really deserving or competent as people might think. But ironically, stepping into a confident persona can help quell those imposter feelings. Shakespeare himself said, all the world's a stage. So if you approach it in life with that mindset, then you can directly affect your immediate environment in the way that you desire. Now, some might argue this. Some might argue and say that this is fake it till you make it, but I disagree. I think because we are these deeply complex humans, these personas are just extensions of ourselves, and it's just a matter of discerning the qualities that we'd like to put forward and activating on that. Okay, so let's talk about the law of assumption and how it relates to all this. The law of assumption is kind of like the inner game of this personal transformation. If you haven't heard about it, don't worry. We're going to break it down and we're going to connect it back to Marilyn's story. So the law of assumption is a concept popularized by philosopher Neville Goddard and others. And it basically states that your assumptions about yourself and the world shape your reality. In other words, what you believe to be true with absolute conviction will eventually become a reality outwardly in your life. So it's kind of like an internal thermostat setting where you're setting the conditions of this experience that you fully believe with every fiber of your being that you deserve to have. Some might call this manifesting and think, it's magic, and they might get a little uncomfy and weird about that. But I truly believe that magic is simply science that we don't understand yet. And this is a perfect example of that. So how does this all connect back to Marilyn Monroe? Well, think back to that moment on Broadway, what I first talked about at the beginning of the episode. Marilyn's transformation started inside. So before anyone else knew her or saw her as a star, she assumed the state of being a star. She knew how to click into that identity internally. One self-development writer explains it perfectly. They say, Monroe didn't merely dream of stardom, she assumed it to be her future. Together, these two laws, attraction and assumption, underpin the Marilyn Monroe Effect. So, in plain terms, Marilyn acted as if she already was this glamorous, magnetic celebrity, not in an arrogant way, but in a quietly confident, matter-of-fact way. And because she confidently assumed and believed it, it morphed into her reality in that moment. Whoa, we're bending the matrix. There's another famous case here that I also want to talk about, and that's Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers of all time. He constantly affirmed his greatness long before the world recognized him. He said, literally, I am the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was. Direct quote. So he literally assumed the identity that he was the greatest, and eventually through training and confidence, he became exactly that. He saw the end goal and filled in the gaps. All right, so at this point, you might be excited by this concept, but wondering, how do I actually do this in my life? Great question, let's get practical. Here are some actionable strategies and tips to cultivate your very own Marilyn Monroe effect. Number one, Set your mindset first and assume that confidence. Everything begins with the internal script, like I mentioned before. Before entering a situation, take a moment to set that intention. Tell yourself a positive assumption. For example, I am interesting and confident, and people will enjoy talking with me. Or, I belong at this table. Number 2, use physical cues to switch on. We're going to do a little bit of method acting here. So we're creating a ritual or a physical action that helps us trigger your confident persona. Marilyn's switch might have been purely mental because that's just what worked for hers, but you can use external cues. Some performers have a specific item, like a jacket or a pair of glasses, that when they put it on, it signals game time, and that kind of activates their persona switch. Think of Mr. Rogers changing into his sweater and sneakers, and Todd Herman, the coach for Kobe, he calls this your phone booth moment, which is a nod to Superman. He suggests that using a physical totem is a really good outlet for activating that alter ego. And number 3, mind your posture and eye contact. I've said this before, but nonverbal tweaks make a big difference in how you come across and how you feel. Uncross those arms, stand up straight, make that eye contact. I said it before, I'm going to say it again, make eye contact. So if direct eye contact is difficult for you, here's a little trick. Next time you meet someone and you look into their face for the first time, notice the colors of their eye. It subtly forces you to look and take note of that without feeling too intense. Now you have a job to do. What is the color of this person's eyes? You're not thinking, I need to look into this person's eyes. Cool. Okay. Embrace the authentic you. The goal of adopting a persona or switching on a presence is not to become someone else or deceive. It's simply to amplify your best and most genuine qualities. Marilyn Monroe's persona was still her, just a more dialed up version of her. So think about what makes you you and lean into it. Are you witty, warm, bold, charming, funny? Don't stay away from it. Find a way to express that and have that become a part of your persona. And if you're an introvert, I see you. So your version of that presence might be the calm, attentive listener who surprises people with a sharp insight. This makes me think of Keanu Reeves. Like, he just kind of moves in complete silence, but the man has presence, okay? The lesson here is you don't need to be this, loud extrovert if that's not you. Now, how can we apply this to business and branding? Let's extend those ideas there. So whether it's your personal brand or it's a company's brand, in many ways, the Marilyn Monroe Effect has a direct parallel in how brands operate. So if we think about a successful brand, it's not a logo, it's not a product, it's a persona in itself. It's an energy or presence that attracts customers and fans and ultimately builds a loyal community. Smart businesses know how to cultivate this just with laser focus. So in the late 90s, Apple was an underdog, if you can believe that, almost bankrupt. And Steve Jobs, he made this grand return to the company and he introduced this new campaign called Think Different. It was a branding campaign that essentially reimagined Apple's whole identity. And basically what it did is it celebrated nonconformists, rebels, creative geniuses, those who dared to challenge the status quo. And what its basically focus is Apple was no longer a product. It became an extension of your identity. And that identity was someone who was like cool and rebellious and had original thinking, as opposed to the boring, cold, stiff PCs of the world. So they featured a bunch of icons in these campaigns, historical figures like Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Pablo Picasso, Amelia Earhart. You see what's happening here. In fact, Google hears to the crazy ones and just read that whole thing. It's amazing. Basically, what Apple did is they acted like it was going to change the world, and lo and behold, they did. The products that followed were the brand's confident persona that led the way and inspired employees and customers alike to believe in that reality. They were all in on this too. So this is a case of a company assuming a visionary identity to great success. Another example is Old Spice. So here is a brand that literally went from old and stale to young and exciting by changing its persona. Old Spice was known as like maybe your grandpa's aftershave for decades, and nothing that some bro in his 20s would get excited about. But by the late 2000s, the brand felt boring and uninteresting, and it was losing ground. And in 2010, they embarked on a bold rebranding. And they didn't change their name or their core products, none of that. They instead assumed a new identity, which was cheeky and humorous and over-the-top confident. You might recall the viral "The Man Your Man Could Smell Like" commercials with Isaiah Mustafa and then later on Terry Crews. But anyway, those ads were outrageous and funny and just full of that je ne sais quoi swagger. And this deliberate personality shift for the brand from stale and old-fashioned to energetic, witty, and humorous was genius. It worked practically overnight. Old Spice went from bland to one of the most hottest and talked about brands on the internet. So numbers went up, fans were engaged. Old Spice basically pulled a Marilyn Monroe effect. So how can we apply this to your brand or business? Let's say your organization as a whole is actually very fun and creative, but let's take a look at how you're expressing that. What if your LinkedIn and your website come across as stiff or generic? You might be hiding this sparkle that you have. What if you infused more of those brand values that you have, that maybe you paid a marketing person a lot of money or a marketing team a lot of money to help you put together those brand values? Put those to work, okay? Maybe it's through storytelling, maybe it's through a bold logo refresh, maybe it's sharing some insights with a bit of humor and personality. Okay, but what if your organization is not cheeky and fun and quirky and out there? It doesn't matter. Think of Oprah Winfrey. Her brand is built on warmth, wisdom, and authenticity. When she speaks, whether it's one-on-one on stage or she's fully Oprah, people fully know and trust her. So that's a brand persona and presence that's honed over years, decades even, and it reflects in all of her brands and all of her projects. So the biggest takeaway here is, if your business were a person, who would they be? What human characteristics would they have? I don't want you to think of the corporate motivational posters that are like innovation, teamwork. No, those are important, but what I would empower you to focus on is how you can get human, and then how can you stay consistent in those character qualities in every single piece of communication, collateral, and experience that you offer your audience so that you can reflect that. Thanks for tuning in. That's a wrap on this episode of Jeans with a Blazer. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, a mindset shift, or just the push you needed, do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It helps more people find it, and it keeps these conversations going. And I love hearing from you. Follow @Jeans with a Blazer and tag me with your biggest takeaways, your latest wins, or just tell me what topics you want to hear about next. See you next time.